So welcome. My name is Isaac Carter. I'm with Co-Creative. We're happy to have you here as we explore 6 patterns of collaboration. I am Zooming from Miami, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. I'm doing in the order, different order, y'all. So I think we should say who we are. So you want to introduce yourself, Lizette?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. It's great to see friends and also new friends. I'm calling from Boulder, and I'm also with Co-Creative. I'm gonna pass it over to Stella.
Hi, y'all. I'm Stella. You've had emails from me, calendar invites. It's great to finally be here with you in person. And I'm calling from Northern California on the Redwood Coast in Arcata.
Cool. That's the team. That's what we're with today. We'll get a chance for you all to introduce yourselves to each other a little later. And so we are recording this, and we'll keep this for our own posterity, and we can share with people as we need to. And before we get into the subject matter, I want us to all take an opportunity to put our feet soundly on the ground or in the air, depending on how tall your chair is. Sit comfortably. And I want you to just take a deep breath in and a slow exhale out. Ground ourselves for our time today. Maybe we might take 2. Okay. And welcome for those who just joined. So before we begin, we wanted to take the time and acknowledge that we are living in a time, as we gather today, that the world's in conflict. Uncertainty, polarization, and abundance are in abundance. I'm gonna share my slides here. And we wanted to make sure we didn't make light of that and help us understand that we are coming together in a time of some difficult things that are going on in our lives. And while we're talking about 6 patterns and collaborations to help with system change, we're hoping that this can also support us in our personal lives as we try to navigate the times that we are in. So I'm going to share my screen. And in case someone missed it, we are Co-Creative. And we are looking at 6 patterns of collaborative innovation. And we already took our breath to get ourselves grounded. But if you need another one, please do so. And I opened up and shared just acknowledging that we are in a time of difficulty, and how people are showing up is how people are showing up. And you are welcomed here, however that is. And hopefully we have a supportive environment where we can support each other as we learn about how we can choose to collaborate in these times of isolation. So the purpose is that we're going to introduce 6 patterns that are often occurring in collaborative efforts and give a few examples how they can be leveraged for more efficient, effective, and productive collaborations. So we are here today to be able to look at how can we, and what we've noticed in my work, how can we use those insights and observation and be able to apply to what work that we're doing so that we can actually amplify our possibilities with each other by collaborating well. The flow, we've already done introductions. We're going to get into people we're bringing today when there's a chance to connect. We're going to look at the 6 patterns. We're going to have some times for some small group reflection and discussion. And then we'll do some harvesting from the larger group. And then we'll have some announcements and have a closing. So to move us forward, we've already met the team, Lizette, Marcella, and I. And we want to ask and invite people, and we can put this in the chat. What one word or phrase that represents what you're bringing into the space? Go back. what is one word or phrase that you're bringing into the space? And if somebody can monitor the chat, we can have some readouts as we see those words
Yeah.
appear.
Curiosity, open mind, ready to learn, kindness, open-mindedness again, some anxiety, inquisitiveness, curiosity grounded in experience, curious again, hope, curiosity, learning, hopeful.
A lot of curiosity.
Collaboration with an exclamation point.
With an exclamation point. Okay.
Interest at a transition point. Interest. Curiosity here as well. Knowledge seeking. Hopeful.
Awesome.
And feel free to keep adding.
Yeah, feel free to keep adding, and I encourage people to scroll so you can see what other participants are putting in there. So we're here for all those reasons. And we're your hosts or your guides through that time where we explore some of those things. Just a reminder at Co-Creative, what we do is we help people collaborate. Maybe not even know, they might not know each other well, but we help them get a chance to be able to give them skills and insights that help to create better futures together. Work across many sectors, food, energy, finance, education, and health. And we work in design, supporting more sticker collaboration and supporting collaborative leadership. So that's what we are bringing to the table. And we are happy that you all are joining us for this session today. Here is some information on some of the collaboration we supported. Just a list to give you some ideas of our work and the scope of it and who we support and help. And there's obviously some friends in the room of people that work with us already. So welcome to see you all here. And for those that have not met, welcome. Looking for glad opportunity to meet you for the first time. And hopefully it won't be the last time. We already shared the one room in chat, Zat. And the one word you're bringing, just a chance for you to review that in the chat. We want to make sure we bring people in and we invite people in and we get an idea of what they are bringing to the table. Everything is welcome, just to have a mindset of being curious and hopefully be hopeful, be able to meet everyone where they are at and get to a different place by the time that we are finished with our discussion and dialogue today. So next, I'm gonna turn it over to Lou, and we're gonna get connecting with you all in groups.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, let's use some time to arrive, connect to others, know who is in the room. And at this point, we have this phrase here. We meet at the intersection of what breaks our hearts and what brings us alive. That's how we arrive to the design of this webinar as well. So we want to give you all the opportunity to contemplate this phrase and to, when you get in your groups of 3, first share your name and where you're calling from today, and also reflect and share on how is this phrase showing up in your life or not. Whatever the answer is, it'll be right, the right answer. So before we go into groups, I just want to check if there are any questions around this breakout group. All right, I don't see any. Okay, cool. So we hope that you enjoy. You'll have around 9 minutes, so 3 minutes each. So please be aware of distributing the time equally. Enjoy your conversations. It seems everyone is back now. We hope you had a lovely conversation and introduction with 2 other people. Now I would like to take us forward into the content of these 6 patterns. As Isaac mentioned earlier, we typically review these patterns in the context of collaborative innovation. Today, we want to present how these tools could help both our collaboratives and also help us meet this moment in our relationships with others in our work groups, in our collaborations, in our teams. So that's our purpose. So I'll share my screen now. And just name the patterns that we have right now for you. The first one is spiraling. We're gonna walk you through leverage intentions, for which we actually had a webinar like a couple of months ago. Diverging and converging, working concurrently, checking back, and the design squiggle. So let me share a little bit about spiraling. We usually test and refine our shared intent, the goal, the analysis, the potential shifts and solutions first with a close-in group of friends, what we call friendlies. And then over time, we expand this consultation to people further out across the system. And so we use this to expand that group of people that are looking to create change. It also increases engagement, creates better thinking and solutions. And we're always seeking for rising resonance. That's what we call rising resonance rather than lowest common denominator. And so let me give you an example here that might help us understand how spiraling, the power of spiraling as a pattern. So we have Solar Circle here, which was launched in 2002. It's still operating today. And they have catalyzed the US solar industry from a really small and fragmented market to a really powerful industry that's now forecasted to account for 50% of US production by 2030, which is actually 20 years ahead of the schedule that they had when they launched in 2002. And so this started when one person, Susan Davis, had this idea. Wow, I want to make solar happen for the world. And she shared it with a second person, Elisa Gravitz. And together they started to look at this and they held the question, how much solar does the world need? And then they brought up two other people, and all together, the four of them started to say, oh, what we actually need is the entire industry on board. And with the years, since 2002, they've been able to engage all the different people, heads of industries and companies and so on. And now they are reaching their target 20 years in advance from what they had planned. So that's how powerful spiraling could look like. Actually, what I want to show next is how do we assess the spiraling pattern. So usually when we are in our collaborations and we are starting to need and want to socialize, whether it's our intent or our learnings or our plans with other stakeholders, that's when spiraling can have a great place. The same when we are looking and thinking about who else do we need to test our thinking with, or who else do we need to enroll our work. And so that's a really great space to use spiraling. The second pattern here is leverage intentions. And so usually in groups, we have experienced different tensions around positions that sometimes seem mutually exclusive. And these positions usually reflect like a value that seem that they are opposite, but in reality, they're more like complementary or actually two sides of a spectrum. And so these tensions can be sources of polarization. Sometimes group can get stuck. And if we let that be just on the surface, it can actually end up in bad conflict. So what we love to use leverage tensions is to create a framework that look into the positive benefits or assets of the values that are at play. And so, for example, here, working with the Clean Electronics Production Network, this is a multi-stakeholder network that was bringing together electronic brands, suppliers, labor groups, environmental NGOs, and academics. And all of them wanted to eliminate workers' exposure to toxic chemicals used in electronics manufacturing. And so you may imagine the different, tensions that the group had given the diversity of the stakeholders. And so some of the tensions that emerged there were, for example, the individual interest and common goals. So here, obviously, with the group, the idea wasn't to choose only individual interests or only common goals, but to really identify the benefits of both. So a very solid, good strategy that created win-win for everyone was created. And so how do we know when to use the leverage intentions? When we see a group that has a lot of polarization around a particular tension, and we can identify that there are a couple of values at play. Also, when people are treating conflict and difference as personal issues. And sometimes we see that in groups, like sometimes there is, it might be a majority of a group that is supporting one way of being, and we have to avoid risk. And then there is another person that says, but we really need to accomplish our goals. So how can we as groups bridge those differences by leveraging these tensions? Another way here is to see when we have in different collaborations preferences for different strategies, for example, and we have two different camps. And so we can create a space for common ground where we create an action plan that includes both the benefits of both different strategies or values that are at play. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Isaac to continue with the following pattern.
Thank you, Lou. Yeah, so the next pattern that we are want to share is diverging and converging. And so when you are in collaborative situations, many of you may have had the experience where you're generating some ideas about something, and then someone abruptly, the facilitator or someone else, makes us go to the next step. And that next step may not allow for all of the brilliance to come out that was needed to come out. And also sometimes you're in a situation where you're trying to narrow down choices, but sometimes people have choices already in mind or things they want to pursue. And if you bring those choices together and make a decision without giving you opportunity to really look at and evaluate and choose, it can be frustrating. So when we're working with collaborations, the pattern of diverging and converging is very important. We need to make space so people can open up and we can generate all the possibilities to help inform our analysis and generate ideas. At the same time, we need to also have a process to narrow things down and get that to a point where we can choose and prioritize. But if we do one at the expense of the other, we're not find the best solution. Next slide. So in terms of diverging and converging, what we want to be able to do is, have we fostered, questioning to ask, have we fostered enough alignment around the goal and scope of what we're going to do? Have we formed deep enough trust to enable a real divergence? What might get the group stuck in terms in divergence, and have we reached a point that we overwhelm them to the point of letting go of the preconceived notions and preferred solutions? And so, example, I would say also outside of collaborations, imagine you were throwing a big barbecue party for yourself and you wanted to have people come over and you were trying to think through the menu. You want to make sure you give ample opportunity to diverge and think about all the possibilities you might want to offer the people coming to this party. And then after you've generated those possibilities, then you can start converging on and actually making the selection of things you want to do and you want to offer at this big party you're having. So that's a way for you to look at diverging and converging in the collaborative standpoint, as well as looking at how it may have some practical application in your life. It's something that we do naturally as people, so somewhat, but we want to bring some intentionality to it as we are facilitators in spaces to help systems navigate, networks navigate, but also has applicable use to our own personal lives that we can use this tool. Next slide. The next pattern of collaboration is working concurrently. And so sometimes when we're working, we might want to put a linear sequential order to the process, which is part of naturally how we sometimes organize things as people. This may not always work, and sometimes it will slow down the work and make it less productive and definitely less engaging because all participants are not providing their voice. Generally, sometimes in the group, there are people that naturally tend to own the space when we're talking and we're trying to generate ideas, and those people can take over space from those who might be more introverted or prefer a different modality of communication. So making sure we're and working concurrently as a tool is giving people the opportunity to think and make sure we get the best ideas by getting all the ideas out. So some things we can do is use this like in silent brainstorming. So you can generate an idea around brainstorming, but before people announce what their ideas are, you give people some silent reflective time to brainstorm, capture that on something like Mural or Mural, and use that space. And then that way you generate the ideas coming from a variety of people without prioritizing any voice before you start thinking about where you might want to diverge and converge. Sometimes you can also do this by creating separate teams around different network initiatives. And another way you can do this is also having multiple teams prototype the same solution. And then you can draw from the best features of that, what those groups are coming up with. And it gives you an opportunity to give diverse perspectives to help diversify your prototypes. And you can pick elements from each of them and add them to whatever intervention you're trying to do. The important thing here is that we're trying to make space for people to participate, and we want to capture all the voices and be as inclusive as possible. This also makes sure that people are engaged in a way that allows them to stay with the group and continue to push the work forward. Next slide, please. So as we're thinking about assessing the patterns and working concurrently, are we advancing the learning of our work in a sequential order, or are we advancing our thinking in a concurrent stream? So how are we doing this in parallel? Where are the bottlenecks in our collaboration, and how can working concurrently help us with that? And then are we welcoming diverse voices? Are we capturing the voices from people who always talk or contribute, or are we making room in our designs and our interactions to make sure that we're welcoming diverse people to the table?
Isaac, there's a question in the chat to just elaborate a little bit more on silent brainstorming.
Okay. So we might do this a little later, but if I ask you right now a question, what does some ideas around working concurrently apply to you in your work? Before we started generating ideas out and started asking people in the chat, we might just say, hey, in this mural space, please go here. And for the first 5 minutes, just everyone list out their ideas for what they think working concurrently means. And then we can list out all those ideas before we as facilitators then begin to engage in further discussion about what these things, or what the answers could be possibly be, or what people have shared in the screen, to make sure we capture the ideas from people. And then when those ideas are out there, one common thing we do is theme the ideas. So we start, as everybody contributes concurrently, we might be working as co-facilitators and supporting each other. How do we theme these ideas into different ways so they can capture what everybody contribute, but also make some organization of it so people can follow along? Does that help?
I want to add something.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You know, like it happens to me a lot. We all have different ways of knowing and learning. And this happens a lot to me. Sometimes I have the perfect answer 5 minutes after we have closed the conversation. Because I need time to think of myself, to know, like, what is it I'm feeling about it? What is it that my body, and what is the insight that I have? And so when I have those 5 quiet minutes, I'm able to know what I want to bring into the table and speak it with others. It's fair to say other people get better at just talking with people differently. So that's why we offer spaces with silent brainstorming, but also in groups.
Thanks, Lou.
All right.
Does that capture what the question was? Hopefully. If not, please raise your hand and we will definitely elaborate as needed.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then so in terms of how do we assess the working concurrently, it's just making sure that we have ample opportunities to include everyone's voice in the collaborative process, and that keeps them engaged. And so if we were doing this and we're talking about, again, to our barbecue party that we're throwing, like how do we do this in a way that allows people to work concurrently? And so giving people the time to think about what they might want to serve. You might have different teams for who's on food, who's on music, who's on activities. who's planning the layout and decorations. Give people ample opportunity to contribute, and then later on you can start honing in and taking from the best of the contributions to really make your party the best it can be. All right, and another pattern is checking back. So as we are people working toward change, and kind of as we opened up in the beginning here, now we're living in a world that has some rapid change taking place, and in some ways it's unprecedented and definitely leads to some uncertainty. Checking back gives us an ability to reevaluate the earlier parts of our work that we're working on, and it allows for. I think there's someone is frozen. Am I frozen?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I'll respond.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Checking back allows us to really look at our work and our decision making upstream, and making sure that we have an ability to and an awareness to possibly change our course of action. So we look at our goals, scope, and analysis and membership, so we can look at it and say, is this the best expression of our shared intent right now as we're in the middle of this? Do we need to expand or contract our scope? We have tools to help with that, like focus and frame. Analysis, have we learned new things that we should be putting into our analysis that may change the direction or slightly modify the choices we make moving forward? And then based on what we know now, do we have the people we need to do this work? As the work emerges, as you learn more about the system and the human experience within it, then how is it that you make sure that you are including people that need to be included? And as you get new insights, as you prototype and apply ideas and try them, you may have new opportunities to include people that maybe weren't included at first, but need to be included as you move forward if you want to get the best result possible. And what we call this is checking back. So you get a chance to check and see where you're going, make sure that you are aligned and you move in the right direction. And whatever variables have changed, you're aware of those, you acknowledge those, and you think about them, how they apply to your design or the direction of your network of collaboration. And as we get through the party analogy, checking back gives you an opportunity to make sure that you are doing everything you can do to have the best party possible. Checking back gives you to make sure that, is this the right menu? Do you have the right number of proteins? Do you need add extra veggies? Do you have some new people who are joining because you want to be inclusive as possible? What are their dietary needs? It's like a GPS for recalculating your route. As you gather more information, you might want to say recalculating and figure out a way to move forward in a different way. And to assess those patterns, we look at, like, have we learned anything that might require us to think things through differently? And then how might changing the context change our upstream decisions? This is very important in the collaboration, especially in a world that we live in now, when there's so much uncertainty and unprecedented change, and changes happen very rapidly. We have to be able to take out the time in our designs and raise our consciousness to how those changes possibly impacting how we collaborate together. And checking back is one of those patterns of collaboration that helps do that. I'm turning you, Lou, for the last one.
Sure. So this is one of my favorite ones, is design squiggle. And it's because designing these solutions, particularly under our collaborations, looking at solving or creating systems change is a messy process. And not only is messy, it's a multi-year, multi-stakeholder messy process. And so it's not linear. And we like to, when we're working with our collaboratives, we like people to know that that's going to happen. And we do that in our first meeting. We let them know. And sometimes when we are, in the middle of it, 1 year, 2 years forward, when, there is tensions or, there's no clarity, then we're able to show the picture and say, remember when we show you the first time? This is where we are right now. This is one of the graphics that was shown in one of the meetings at the Climate Safe Lending Collaborative, because it happens. And so as facilitators of our collaboratives, we really need to bring that awareness that these things happen, aren't linear, are dynamic, and sometimes we might feel lost, but it's part of the process. It really is part of the process. And so let me go back here and ensure that I share, strategies and solutions will emerge in time. And that's part of our facilitator's role, to ensure that these will happen and create enough safety in our container to know that is going to emerge. And sometimes it's important that participants also have the embodied experience of linear versus nonlinear and messy. So using activities that allows us to get more familiar with the feeling that design squiggle is really useful. In terms of assessing this pattern, things like how are people doing with the messiness? Do they view it as something to solve or something inherent to the systemic work? And is the messiness related to poor process design and facilitation, or to the inherent complexity of the systemic problem? So making these distinctions is really important to continue the trust and the strength of the container we're building in our collaboratives. All right, so I'm gonna stop here for a moment because I wanna just check. We've spoken quite a bit, and I want to ensure that if there are questions we can answer or at least get them for our plenary, and then we'll continue with the rest. So just checking in quickly.
If we can address it earlier, Mohammed had asked a question about whether spiraling, I believe is what Mohammed was referencing, was a centralized process. And Mohammed just wanted to invite you to elaborate more on your question so we can maybe address that before we go out into breakout groups and come back for more connecting, reflecting questions and time together.
Yeah.
Hi, Mohammed. Did you want, and no pressure, but if you'd like to ask again, you're welcome.
Actually, it was mentioned in the example that, a person can initiate, let's say, a challenge, or he or she has an idea, and later on, maybe he can share this idea with another one. Till that, we will have, a group of people who are trying to find a solution to one of the challenges that influence our life. But at such a moment, I do feel that this is very difficult if it's a decentralized process. But if it's a centralized process, it could be managed. And if it is a centralized process, how we can, manage it according to your methodology?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Mohammed. Thank you so much. I don't know if the word that I would use would be centralized, but the way that I can describe it is that when an idea for a collaborative starts happening, it usually comes from one person, maybe two people, and then kind of like there is like a circle of what we call friendlies. So people that align to that idea and that feeling themselves, that commitment to dedicate a bunch of years and resources to create that systems change. So then maybe that's what, if I'm understanding correctly, that might be what is seen as centralized. So yeah, there is a core group that starts and becomes what we call the change system. And change system for us is the group of people that are committed to create that larger system change they want to see. They ultimately become that group that almost like embodies the system that they want to see in how they organize their strategy. So that group continues and then it starts engaging others. And of course, to the extent that there is more engagement and critical shifts are created, so then there is a more there's more inclusive and other ideas start coming in, but there is a shared intent that the people that are arriving to align to. So then through the time, if we later use the check back pattern and we say like, okay, everyone, we were 4, now we're 20, and this is our shared intent. Where are we here? What does need to be adjusted? Are our critical shifts meeting what we really want to achieve, by 2030 or so. So that the check back help us kind of like tie together and build on all the different views that have come along under the same shared alignment. Was this helpful? Yeah. Okay, great.
So
Oh, go ahead.
we have quite a few more questions in the chat. So I just want to check with you too if we would like to come back or like think about those while folks are in breakout rooms, come back and respond in plenary.
Yeah, let's do that. I suggest we go ahead with our breakout groups, and then after that we'll come back to plenary. So we probably will have even more questions. So Isaac, over to you.
Okay. Just to set up what we are doing next, let me go to breakout groups. We're gonna give you the opportunity to be in breakout groups for about 12 or 13 minutes. In these groups, you're going to share your name. You're going to share how these patterns are showing up in your teams or collaboration, and what patterns do you see yourself easily doing, and what others would be more challenging and why. And I think those prompts will be in the chat, and what they are in the chat, Marcella is going to then open up the rooms. You'll go, and then when you get back, we'll do some debriefing, as well as we look at over the questions that were in the chat and see if we can consolidate some of them, and then answer them for you when you get back. Cool. All right, so let's go. So those people who have to leave, we see some people leaving. We already have a recording, and we will share the slide deck so you can still have access to the information. Welcome back. I'm hoping you all were having engaged conversations that you didn't want to end. And we encourage you to keep those conversations going in the future if you can. So if you haven't got each other's information, please do so. So we want to hear back from people. What were the conversation like? And so we have some debriefing questions. So what's standing out from the conversation? What stories, examples of the patterns would you like to share? And how can these patterns support your work? And we invite people to use the chat or come off mute and share. And so we can have some engagement around your conversations.
And we were tracking some of the questions before folks went into breakout. So if you want to lift one back up, please do raise your hand or lift it up again in the chat. It'd be great.
I have a question. So our conversation was lovely. We lost one of our conversation partners at one, but we got to hear from her before she left. And one of the things that we were talking about was definitely the ones that stood out to us as like, oh, these might be more challenging or we have less experience with. But I was talking to Heather, and I was sharing this idea of like imagining how these might actually become applied. And so thinking about these like abstractions actually becoming a way of planning out your project or initiative to kind of experience like, oh, if we're actually in a spiraling pattern. So let's lean into that and let's allow, the spiraling process to kind of go up to a point before we then like onboard new people in a clear way. And then we go back into spiraling, and then we have periods of onboarding, because that's the pattern that we have within our network and within the work that we're doing. And one thing that came up was that, Heather was sharing that leveraging tensions is something that she's really experienced at like the beginning of a project. So for her, it was resonating really as kind of like a phase. So I was just wondering, is it both of those things, which I bet you're going to say yes, but or is it something that becomes like almost like a way to define your project arc beyond just naming it? Yeah, an inarticulate question. I'm sure you can make sense of it. And
I can give it a try, and then we'll see what Isaac also shares. I think, I mean, Isabella, we can use these patterns in so many ways. We can be as creative as we want, and they can help us at different levels too. So for example, spiraling can be used at the very beginning when an initiative is starting, and you you intentionally are engaging different multiple stakeholders as diverse as possible to reflect a diverse group that is working towards achieving a particular change, right? Having said that, you can, once you have kind of like a more coherent, diverse change group or change system, that's when you can start using a spiraling more kind of like in your meetings, ensuring that, if there is a question, then you have 2 people that then speak with 4 people. And so you start kind of like making sense together in groups. That's another way. But you can also use a spiraling as okay, this is one of the methods we have in our collaborative innovation for, the first 6 months. So the idea here is to notice that these tools and these patterns are useful in different contexts. And so it does require a little bit of creativity and taking some risk to try them, to see what they work. And if they don't work, don't use them. Change it. Use something else. Because something that is important for us also is to know that these are things that we have noticed through the decades that work with collaboratives. Maybe some of them might not in one. Maybe it works in something else, works better, right? So creativity, agility, and flexibility is really important when you're using this. I hope that was
Good
helpful.
answer. That was a good answer. I don't have anything to add other than just say like it's a tool. You have tools as facilitators, as leaders and changers, and be open to using those tools, but also be open to changing them depending on the context and what's happening in the collaborative or the group. So others, we invite you to reflect on some of the questions that you may have, or something that stand out from your conversation or a story you'd like to share about these patterns or how you possibly can put them into your work. Or maybe you already put them into your work. You want to tell us a victory story. That was always good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your hand.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Um, we had a question in our group about the design squiggle, and specifically, how do you tell when you're like the good kind of lost, which is just that it's a messy process and you're in the middle of it and you can't quite see where you'll be at the end of it, but you just need to trust. And when you're like the bad kind of lost, where it's a bad process or poor facilitation or all of that, like what are the indicators that like you can tell as a facilitator or as someone in the group that can help like discern the answer to that question? And also like how do you cultivate beyond just like naming this is messy and we're in the middle of the mess. Like, how do you cultivate the kind of trust and patience in the group that will help folks get through it to the end?
I can jump in right now, and then Lizette, you can follow up, or Marcella, if you need. So for me, I want to start. I don't want to problematize things, but I think as facilitators, the idea of being neutral is important. So in terms of when working with a group and they're experiencing a certain point of upheaval or uncertainty or misdirection, taking the value out of whether this is good or bad and put the value into the continuing to work to get through the process is where I would kind of frame that kind of conversation, so that people don't personalize where they are as either good or bad, just personalize as we are here. And so if we are here, from here, where do we want to go? And it might help us to engage in different parts of the pattern. So in my mindset, the design squiggle is an opportunity for us to reflect back on what patterns of collaboration will be helpful right now to help the group get to a different direction. So do you need to go back into spiral? Do you need to check in? Do you need to do some more work concurrently? Do you need to diverge or converge to help navigate out of this particular space where it's not going the way people want it to go as a process. So as you are a facilitator, you have those tools to one, acknowledge the current state where they are, to be able to affirm that it's okay being here where we are, and it may seem frustrating, but to reinforce how if we do the collaboration well and use some of these other tools, we will find the place we need to go and we get our work to the point we need to get to, because we just understand that this is part of the process. It's part, we're the fish in the water and we're gonna be in water. And it's okay. Sometimes the water is murky, sometimes it's clean, whatever, but we're still in the water. And because we're working together, we'll find a solution, a pathway out. To help? Thank you. Anyone else? We have a few more minutes. What other things were percolating in your breakout rooms?
I've got a question. We were talking, well, I was talking a little bit about like whether these patterns are kind of like, are they sequential? Like, is it, you know, if you're talking about like designing, you know, in my head, I was thinking about a kind of larger network. I'm involved in a sort of an emerging collaborative at the moment, which I think has just gone through a round of spiraling. And I'm trying to understand whether what these patterns, whether they are things that you've sort of noticed out in the wild that you're naming, or whether there is a desired like sequence, or like, you know, the well successful groups do it this way.
We're going to do the one pattern. We're going to give Lizette a few minutes to think, silent brainstorming. I'm going to answer, try to answer the question while she's thinking. So what I would say is that there is no direct like sequence of order to put these into in terms of the design. It's more you as a facilitator having awareness of and an attunement to when these things are occurring in a collaborative process. What are the possible tools I can use to help the people get beyond wherever they're stuck? And so use it as a toolkit of things you can possibly use, but you don't necessarily have to use with this group. Also understand that there may be other techniques that people might want to use that might mirror or do something similar to what we propose in our 6 patterns. There was a question about, I think it was mail, monitoring, evaluating. I don't remember what the L was.
Yeah.
Learning, okay. And how that may apply to something like checking back, where they maybe both be tools you use. One may be something that you intentionally plan to use as part of a process. And so you're going to do this, but then you might be in a process that doesn't have that already in it, and that might be an application where checking in could help. I don't know if you want to add anything, Lou.
Just one more thing, you know, in our session today, we're talking about 6 patterns, but it's also true that, part of the collaborative innovation process itself is constantly looking to connect, align, learn, and make. So these 4 agendas are really important. And these patterns kind of like weave into these agendas that we always try to have, depending the balance that is needed by the collaborative. And so there is a longer process that has, you know, moments where we interview people from the system, moments where we come up with what are the critical shifts we're doing, right? So there are some steps in the collaborative innovation, and these 6 patterns kind of like come up in and out throughout that process. Just to keep in mind that it's not only the 6 patterns. I think that with that, it's a great segue for me to get us into some silent reflection individually that we want to give you the taste of. And so I'm putting in the chat right now some questions I would love for you to reflect on. Just one moment of insight or connection that you're taking from this webinar with you, and what intention for how you practice collaboration differently in their own context based on what you've learned here, if that's applicable. Also, how could these patterns support you in your day-to-day? Maybe relationships, personal life, work, tension resolution. Just think of an example. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to journal or write it in your computer or just think about it, whatever serves you best. The questions are in the chat as well for your reference. All right. So I hope that this was a good moment for you to reflect with yourself, to know what insights and intentions you're taking with you. I'm going to pass it now to Isaac to get us into some plenary conversation.
Yeah, so we would look for opportunities for a few people to share any insights, inspiration, or intentions they have from either the conversations or the own self-reflection that you want to share with the group. So any insights, inspiration, or intentions? You can use the chat, you can raise your hand, or you can come off mute. All is welcome.
I'll hop in if that's okay. I'm really new to this work, and the initiative I've been given is one that has existed for a while, but has had a whole lot of upheaval in the last 6 to 8 months. And I think I found myself really thinking like, okay, how do we move forward? How do we move forward? How do we move forward? And I'm actually really leaning into the value of this checking back. Maybe this is a period of time where checking back is what's needed right now, to kind of check back in with what was the original goal? What was the original intention? Does that still work? Do we want to get back to that? So that has actually been really helpful and helping me guide maybe what the next pieces look like.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Catherine.
Yeah, I think it's fairly similar to what Erin just said of like, I've been reflecting on the need for reflection. So I think the kind of collaborative that I'm working with are so kind of focused on the thing we want to fix, right? That I suspect that they haven't actually reflected back on like the purpose of the collaboration, and actually that they have probably brought in this latest moment of the spiral, they've probably brought in divergence and they've probably brought in tension, which is good. But I think this will help me to be able to say, this is probably what's going to happen at this point, because I think the kind of instigators for the expansion were just like, oh, more people means more influence. And so I think that's, yeah, I think that's it.
And we've got some folks in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Catherine.
Okay.
About,
Can you?
yeah, Isabella sharing being in the midst of a discovery phase for an emerging business and going to bring spiraling into the process, been using a snowball method to expand discovery. So it is already a spiral, so like continuing, but maybe with a new frame, leveraging tensions in the discovery phase as well, being useful for the process.
Mm-hmm.
And another reflection from Anila, that as much as the 6 patterns can be seen as a toolbox to go to when needed, they should also weave in and out consistently in day-to-day business and life.
Awesome.
I want to add something here because I remember I saw a question around leveraging tensions and like how and when they emerge. And what I wanted to bring is that usually when we are starting collaboratives in our launch meeting, we actually name the tensions that we are seeing from the get-go. Like usually, right? Like individually, collective, short-term or quick wins with systems change and all of these things, just so people can start holding in their systems the tensions that we are going to be having in the future. And so that happens. And sometimes when we are in the middle of a particular tension, let's say talking about a particular critical shift, like choosing a critical shift, where we see two values really in tension there, then we bring it back. But we don't bring it back just to teach what's the tension. We start looking at, okay, as a group, let's look at what would be the benefits of these both values. What would be the downsides? So we work with the group to identify together what would benefit us all and what wouldn't. But it happens in different, again, at the beginning or later on, depending on where the group is and how tensions are manifesting or not in the group.
Thank you for that, Lou. We only have a few more minutes. We're about to come to close. If I invite everyone to come off of mute as I'm off of onto screen if you can, and we're going to wrap up here. And the purpose of having this, if you can come off screen, is that I want you to look around and look at these faces. Every person here is part of a larger system, and we are a part of a system together. We are interrelated, interconnected in that way. And collaborations isn't the absence of struggle. It's the courage to stay together during the struggle. And that's something we want to make sure we share and offer. And then hopefully you can leave this space grounded, inspired, more curious, or if your heart's more open and more to tackle the abundance of uncertainty and conflict that we're having in our world today. And you see each other as part of the light we're trying to shine in those spaces as we hopefully create some change. And I'll turn it over to you, Sela.
Thank you, Isaac. And thank you all so much for being here. I did want to share that we have a lot more resources and learning opportunities on our website. We'd love for you to engage, utilize the free tools. We have a lot of them, including materials related to 6 patterns available on our site. So I've dropped that here in the chat, as well as a collaboration advisor tool that we have trained up. It's an AI advisor. We've trained up on all of our materials. So if you want to sketch out a design for a next meeting or ask some questions about some of the frameworks that you might find in our tools library, use it, play in that space, and then reach out if there's something that you want more information on from us directly. And we've got courses coming up that go into more on 6 patterns and beyond. So we hope you'll join us to keep learning and connecting together. Thank you so much for your good work, for your time. And if you will unmute, say a blessing into the space as we close today for the rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are in the world. We'd love to hear our voices together as we come to a close today.
More love.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Really grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. More love with everybody leaving.